Opening, the decision fear made for you. Look back at one choice from your last year, the job not applied for, the conversation not had, the trip not taken, the word not said. Now ask the honest question most people avoid: who actually made that decision? You may remember deciding, but look closer. The choice was made by a feeling, a tightening, a pulling back, a quiet voice saying not yet, not this, too risky. The feeling was fear, and fear, without your name on the choice, made a decision that shaped your life. This audiobook is about that moment, the one where fear steps from passenger to driver and you let it, because letting it felt like caution and caution felt like wisdom. It is not about becoming fearless. Fearless is a cartoon. The person who feels nothing before a leap is not brave. They are unanchored. The person this book is written for feels the fear fully and is still learning to keep their hand on the wheel. That is the whole skill, and it is a skill, which means it can be built, starting wherever you are. We will use a method called the brave method. Bring the fear into view. Read what it is protecting. Assess the real risk. Venture one step forward. Expand through repetition. 5 moves, none of them requiring you to stop feeling afraid because you won't, and waiting to feel calm before you act is exactly the trap this book is here to spring. You act with the fear present. That is what brave means here, not absence of fear, but presence of you. One boundary stated plainly. This is a practical companion for living more deliberately in the face of ordinary fear. It is not therapy, and it does not pretend to be. Real danger is real, and this book will never tell you to walk toward it. Physical danger, legal trouble, financial ruin, medical risk, abuse, unsafe relationships, those are not discomfort in costume. They are danger, and the correct response to danger is not courage, it is distance. The courage this book teaches is for the ordinary fears that impersonate danger, the awkward conversation, the rejected application, the uncertain start. Those are the ones fear decides for you, and those are the ones you are about to take back. Chapter 1. When Fear Starts Choosing Your Life. Fear is supposed to be a helper. It scans for threat, and when the threat is real, a cliff edge, a speeding car, a genuinely unsafe person, it is exactly right to take the wheel. The problem is that the same alarm built for cliffs now fires at job applications, phone calls, and honest sentences, and the body cannot tell the difference between a predator and a performance review. So fear, useful at the cliff, ends up managing your Tuesday, and your Tuesday is where a life is actually lived. You can see the takeover most clearly in retrospect. The career you did not pursue, the person you did not tell, the year you spent in a room you had outgrown because leaving felt like falling. None of those were cliff edges. They were discomforts, and discomfort felt like danger, and danger authorized fear to decide. The decision was made, and you called it prudence, and prudence is a kinder name for a choice you did not examine. The first step is simply noticing how often the driver is not you. Not to shame the past was fear doing its job with outdated instructions. But to change the future, you have to see the pattern. A decision made from a flinch is still a decision about your life, and if you did not choose it deliberately, something else did. Naming that is not weakness. It is the beginning of ownership, which is the only place courage can be built. This chapter asks one thing. For 1 week, mark the choices fear made. Not the big ones. The small ones, the message not sent, the question not asked, the step not taken. You will be surprised how many there are, and surprise is useful. You cannot take back a wheel you do not know you dropped. The week of marking is the moment you notice the hand is not on it, and noticing is the first move of putting it back. Chapter 2. Fear is not always a warning. The culture around courage is messy. On one side, a cheerleading that says be fearless, which is impossible and therefore useless. On the other, a quiet assumption that if you are afraid, the thing must be wrong and the fear is a warning to heed. Both are half-truths, and half-truths are the most dangerous kind, because they look like wisdom while pointing you the wrong way. Fear is a warning when the threat is real. It is not a warning when the threat is a story your mind is telling about a possible future. The same sensation, the tight chest, the hesitation can mean step back, this is unsafe, or step back, this is unfamiliar, and the body reports both as alarm. The sensation does not carry a label. You have to read the label yourself, and reading it is the skill this book exists to teach. This is why trust your gut is incomplete advice. Your gut is ancient and protective, and it is also jumpy. It will flag a harmless conversation as if it were a threat, because to the ancient protector, embarrassment and death feel similar. Both are exclusion, and exclusion once meant death. Your gut does not know you are safe in a meeting. It only knows the old code. So trusting it blindly hands the wheel to a system that cannot tell a meeting from a predator. The reframe is simple and freeing. Fear can be information without being instruction. The feeling arrives, you note it. You ask what it is actually about. Sometimes the answer is real danger, step back. Often the answer is discomfort, proceed carefully. The feeling is no longer the decision. It is a signal you interpret like a dashboard light, not a command you obey. That single shift from fear as instruction to fear as information is the foundation of everything that follows. Chapter 3. The difference between danger and discomfort. If there is one distinction this book wants you to carry, it is this. Danger is real and discomfort is not. Danger threatens your well-being in a way that warrants stopping. Discomfort threatens your comfort, and comfort is not well-being. Most of what fear decides for you is discomfort wearing the costume of danger, and learning to see the costume is how you stop obeying it. Danger has markers. It is specific. A real physical threat, a genuine legal exposure, a documented financial catastrophe, a relationship that harms you, a medical signal you should not ignore. Danger says stop, and the right response is to stop, because courage is not recklessness, and this book will say so as many times as it takes. Discomfort has different markers. It is vague. A feeling of exposure, a fear of looking foolish, a dread of the unknown, a wince you cannot name. Discomfort says stop too, but here stop only protects a feeling, and feelings, however loud, are not reasons to abandon a life you want. The confusion is understandable. The body reacts to both with the same alarm because the body's alarm system is old and does not distinguish. But you are not only your body's alarm. You are the part that can look at the alarm and ask, is there actually a fire or is there a bell? A bell can be felt, respected, and walked past. A fire cannot. The difference is not in the feeling. It is in the thing the feeling points to, and the thing is almost always a bell. A practice. When fear rises before a decision, ask the question that settles the matter. If I do this, what is the actual worst realistic outcome, and can I survive it? If the answer is I might feel embarrassed or I might be told no, that is discomfort, and discomfort is survivable, so the decision returns to your hands. If the answer is I could be harmed, legally exposed, or unsafe, that is danger, and the decision is to pause and get help. The question does not remove the fear. It correctly assigns it, and correct assignment is the whole of courage. Chapter 4. Why Waiting for Confidence Keeps You Stuck. A quiet lie keeps many people frozen, that confidence comes first and action follows, that you must feel ready, certain, unafraid, and then you will move. The order is backwards. Confidence is not the cause of action. It is often the result of it. You do not feel brave and then speak. You speak and then sometimes feel brave. Waiting to feel ready is waiting for a cause that only the action can produce, so the wait has no end. Fear loves this lie because the lie gives it permanent tenure. As long as you require confidence before moving, fear only has to supply the lacking confidence, which it will never do, and the decision defaults to stillness, which fear prefers. The loop is elegant and cruel. I can't act because I'm not confident. I'm not confident because I haven't acted, so I won't act. Fear sits in the driver's seat, defended by a reasonable-sounding rule you imposed on yourself. The correction is to act while unconfident on purpose. Not recklessly, with the real risk test in mind, but before the feeling arrives. The first time you speak while your voice shakes, the shake does not disqualify you. It proves you moved despite it, which is the only kind of courage that matters. And the next time the shake is a little less, because evidence accumulated. Last time I was afraid and I did it and I survived. Confidence, refused as a prerequisite, arrives anyway, as a byproduct of the very action you were waiting for it to permit. This is not a call to ignore genuine preparation. Some actions require learning, planning, skill. The point is that preparation becomes avoidance when it is used to delay the feeling of readiness that will never come on its own. Do the real preparation. Then move while still unsure, because unsure is the permanent condition of anyone doing something that matters, and the people who look confident mostly just moved before the unsure feeling finished arriving. You can too. The wheel is yours the moment you stop, requiring permission from a feeling. Chapter 5: Fear of Failure. The fear of failure is the most common driver fear hires. It sounds responsible who wants to fail, and responsibility is a good disguise for avoidance. Underneath, the fear of failure is usually not fear of the event but fear of what the event means. That you are not capable, not enough, exposed as someone who tried and did not make it. The failure is endured. The meaning is what terrifies. This is why small failures are survived and large ones are avoided. The event is not the problem, the story attached to it is. A missed application stings briefly. A launched project that flops carries a sentence, "I am someone whose project flopped." The sentence is the part fear is protecting you from, and the sentence is a story, not a measurement. A flop measures the project, not the person, and conflating the two is the error fear counts on. The real risk test disassembles it. What could realistically happen if you try and it does not work? You spend effort. You learn what does not work. You are where you were minus some time plus some knowledge. What are you imagining? That the failure defines you, that others note it forever, that the door closes. Those are stories, not facts, and stories are not reasons to hand the wheel to fear. What could you do if the feared outcome occurred? Almost always adjust, recover, try differently. Because failure is rarely final and almost never fatal outside of rare, real danger cases this book excludes. The brave move with failure is to separate the event from the verdict. Complete the fear sentence. If I do this, I'm afraid that it will not work. Then assess. Not working is a possible, survivable event. The verdict that you are worthless is a story you can decline to write. Venture one step, apply, launch, try while the verdict lover in you protests. Expand through repetition. Each survived not working teaches that not working is data, not doom, and data is exactly what the next attempt needs. Fear of failure loses its job when failure becomes information instead of identity. Chapter 6: Fear of Judgment. Closely related is the fear of judgment, the dread of being seen, assessed, found wanting. It is ancient. In a tribe, judgment could mean exclusion, and exclusion once meant death, so the alarm around being watched is old and loud. But you are not in a tribe that will let you freeze to death for a misstep. You are in a world where most people are too busy with their own lives to adjudicate yours, and the few who do are not the judges of your worth. The fear of judgment makes quiet decisions. You do not share the idea. You do not dress how you like. You do not speak in the meeting. You smooth yourself down to avoid the imagined gaze, and the smoothing costs you the very thing that made you you. The avoider is not safer. They are smaller, and smallness, chosen repeatedly, becomes a life lived behind a curtain, with fear as the curtain puller, deciding what of you the world may see. Notice the story judgment tells, that others are watching closely and concluding negatively. They are mostly not watching closely. The spotlight you feel is largely yours, not theirs. Most people are preoccupied with their own perceived flaws, which is why they barely register yours, a relief and, oddly, a freedom. The fear sentence here. If I do this, I am afraid that people will think less of me. The real risk test. Some might briefly, and their thought is not a fact about you, and it passes because everyone is the protagonist of their own movie and you are a cameo in theirs. The practice is to be seen in small, survivable ways. Say the sentence. Wear the thing. Share the rough idea. Each time you are seen and the catastrophe does not arrive, because it never does, you collect evidence that being judged is uncomfortable, not dangerous. Expand through repetition until the gaze loses its power, not because others stop judging, but because your life stopped depending on their verdict. Fear of judgment is fear of a story about other people's thoughts, and other people's thoughts are the one thing you were never in control of. So, releasing the wheel to them was always a gift you did not need to make. Chapter 7. Fear of Rejection. Rejection is a specific flavor of judgment with a sharper edge, because it carries loss of the person, the role, the yes. The fear of rejection prevents the ask, the application sent, the invitation offered, the boundary stated, the feeling confessed. The avoider protects against the no by never creating the chance of one, which also deletes the chance of the yes, and the yes was the whole point. What rejection actually is, most of the time, is a mismatch or a timing, not a verdict on your worth. A job says no because the fit was off. A person says no because their life is full. A proposal is declined because the moment passed. These are coordinates, not character. Fear reads them as character because fear's job is to protect the self, and the self feels threatened by a no. But a no to one thing is not a no to you, and conflating the two is the error that keeps the ask unasked. The courage receipt is the tool here. Before an avoided ask, write what fear predicts. They will reject me, I will feel crushed, it will confirm I am not enough. After, write what actually happened. Almost always the actual event is smaller than the predicted one, a calm no, a delay, a maybe, and the crush feared did not arrive or arrived and passed. The receipt is evidence collected by you that rejection is survivable, and survivable is the only fact that matters, because a survivable no is not a reason to stop asking. The yes lives on the other side of the no's you are willing to receive. Practice the ask in low-stakes currency. Ask a small question. Invite a low-risk yes. Each no survived enlarges the space you can occupy because the terror was the no and the no turned out to be a normal Tuesday. Venture one step. Send the message you have not sent. Expand. The more no's you collect, the less each one weighs until rejection becomes what it always was, information about fit, not a sentence about you. Fear of rejection loses its job when you learn, through evidence, that a no is a door that was not yours, not a verdict that you are not worthy of any. Chapter 8. Fear of making the wrong decision. Some fear hides as carefulness. You face a decision and cannot choose, because choosing means one door closes and the closed door might have been the right one. So you examine, and the examination feels wise while it is actually fear of regret wearing the clothes of diligence. The unmade decision is a decision too, usually the worst one, made by default, costing the same regret you were avoiding. The fear of the wrong choice overestimates two things: the odds of catastrophe and the permanence of the result. Most choices are recoverable. A job taken can be left. A word said can be clarified. A path chosen can be adjusted. The truly irreversible are rare, and even many of those allow correction at the edges. Fear tells you every choice is final and every error fatal, which is almost never true, and the untruth is what keeps you parked. The real risk test applies. If you choose and it goes badly, what realistically happens? Usually a setback, a lesson, a recoverable cost. What are you imagining? Ruin, proof of inadequacy, a life unspooled. The imagined is a story, the realistic is a setback. What could you do if it went wrong? Adjust, seek help, try again, because action produces information that deliberation never will, and the information is what lets you correct. The wrong choice, met with movement, becomes a redirection, not a ruin. The brave move is to decide with what you know, accept that regret is possible, and close the door on the unchosen path. Venture one step, make the call, send the word, choose the road. Expand. Each decision made and survived teaches that choosing is not the trap, waiting is. Fear of the wrong choice loses its grip when you learn that a reasonable choice handled well beats a perfect choice never made. Because the perfect choice is a story fear tells to keep you from choosing at all, and the only choice available is the one you make now, with the light you have. Chapter 9. Fear of starting over. Starting over terrifies because it admits the old plan broke, and admitting that feels like failure, which we already know is a story. The person who has built a life, a career, a place, Identity dreads dismantling it even when it no longer fits, because the dismantling proves the fit was lost, and the proof is a wound. So they stay small in a life that ended, because leaving feels like confirming a loss they would rather not name. But starting over is not returning to zero, it is returning to experience. The person who begins again carries the scar knowledge of the first build, what does not work, what they actually value, how to endure, and that knowledge is the real foundation, unavailable to the naive beginner they once were. Fear sells the restart as erasure. It is actually equipment. The broken plan taught the only lessons the new one needs. The fear sentence: if I start again, I am afraid I will have wasted the years. The real risk test: the years are spent either way, only the future is adjustable, and the adjustable future is the thing you recover by beginning. What are you imagining? That starting confirms failure. What is real? Starting confirms life, because a life that can begin again is not a failed life, it is a living one. The cost of safety. Staying in the ended life costs the remaining years, which is the larger waste, and the larger waste is the one fear hopes you do not calculate. Venture one step, one application, one conversation, one small exit. Expand. Each step in the new direction proves the old loss was a door, not a wall, and the wound of the break slowly becomes the wisdom of the rebuild. Fear of starting over is fear of naming a loss. Naming it is the first brick of the new life, and a brick laid is a life begun, which is the only answer the fear cannot give and the only one that matters. Chapter 10: The Safety of Staying Small. There is a comfort in smallness that fear defends relentlessly. Don't raise your hand. Don't pitch the idea. Don't take the stage. Stay where you are known and safe. Smallness feels like protection, and in the short term it is no exposure, no risk, no fall. But the protection has a price, paid in the currency fear does not show you on the label. A life that shrinks to fit the fear, until the safe space is the only space you inhabit. Staying small is a decision fear makes for you repeatedly, and it compounds. Each unraised hand makes the next harder. Each unpitched idea makes the idea muscle weaker. The safe life is not free. It costs you the self that wanted the larger room, and the cost is invisible because it is a non-event. The thing not done leaves no mark, only an absence you feel as a low, unnamed restraint. The cage fear builds is padded, which is why you do not notice it is a cage. The cost of safety exercise makes the price visible. Write what avoiding the decision has already cost: the time, the energy, the opportunity, the confidence, the self-respect. The list is longer than the fear admits, because the fear shows only the comfort and hides the cost. Seeing the cost returns the decision to you, because a padded cage chosen blindly is one thing. A padded cage chosen with eyes open is a life you are no longer willing to trade for comfort that was never the point. Venture one step into the larger room. The hand raised, the idea pitched, the stage taken, while the smallness protector protests. Expand. Each step proves the larger room was survivable, and survivable rooms become familiar, and familiar rooms become yours. The safety of staying small is a story fear tells about comfort. The truth is that growth and comfort are often opponents, and the life you want lives on the growth side, which is reachable the moment you stop letting fear decide which room you may enter. Chapter 11: What Avoidance Quietly Costs You. Avoidance is fear's preferred strategy because it works temporarily. You avoid the call, the application, the conversation, and the fear drops. Relief arrives. The problem is that the relief teaches the wrong lesson. That avoidance is the solution, when avoidance is the interest on a debt that grows. The avoided thing does not disappear, it waits, and waiting adds cost, anxiety, lost time, narrowed options, eroded self-trust. The quiet cost is precisely that it is quiet. A decision made would leave a mark, a result, a next step. An avoidance leaves only a silence, and silence feels like nothing, so you do not count it. But the silences add up to a life deferred, the conversation never had, the application never sent, the start never made, and the deferral is the real loss, far larger than any single feared outcome would have been. Fear sells avoidance as free. It is the most expensive habit you have. The 24-hour move fights the compounding. When a reasonable opportunity appears, take one concrete step within a day before avoidance builds its larger story around the opportunity. The step is small, a message, a draft, a call, but it interrupts the interest accrual because action, however tiny, is a different currency from avoidance, and the different currency does not compound against you. The window of a day is short enough to beat the story and long enough to act, which is exactly the scale courage needs. The cost of safety list revisited is the ledger. Avoidance is not neutral. It is a withdrawal from the account of your life made while you are not looking, and the balance, confidence, options, self-respect falls without a transaction you remember. Courage is not the absence of avoidance. It is the practice of small, timely moves that keep the account growing instead of draining, and the account, not the relief, is what builds the life fear has been quietly spending for you. Chapter 12. The Stories Fear Tells About the Future. Fear is a storyteller, and its favorite genre is catastrophe set in the future. It takes a possible tomorrow and renders it in full, with your humiliation complete, your loss total, your error proven. The story feels like a warning, but it is a fiction, because the future is unwritten and fear writes it in the ink of its own protective anxiety. Believing the fiction is how you hand the wheel to a narrator with a vested interest in keeping you parked. The stories have shapes. The what if that ends in ruin, the prediction that others are judging, the forecast that one mistake ends the path. None are facts, all are projections, and projections are not the future, they are fears wearing the mask of foresight. The mind presents them as if they were likely because a worried mind treats its worries as data and data feels like truth. It is not. It is a feeling with a plot. The real risk test is the editor. Separate what could realistically happen from what you are imagining. Realistic, discomfort, a no, a setback, an adjustment. Imagined, ruin, permanent exclusion, proof of worthlessness. The first is survivable, the second is a story. Reading the draft fear wrote and crossing out the fictional parts returns the future to its actual state, unknown, adjustable, yours to influence, and an unknown future is not a reason to stop. It is the only kind of future there is, and courage is how you walk into it. Practice catching the story mid-sentence. When fear narrates the catastrophe, name it. This is the story, not the future. The naming loosens its grip, because a story you can name is a story you can question, and a story you question is a story you need not obey. Venture one step into the unwritten day. Expand. Each time the catastrophe does not arrive as written, you collect proof that fear's fiction is not prophecy, and proof, repeated, is the quiet freedom of a person who no longer lets a worried narrator decide what the future will be. Chapter 13. Courage in Conversations. The most common arena of fear is the conversation, the one you avoid because it might go badly. The difficult boundary, the honest feeling, the necessary correction, the apology, the request. These are delayed for weeks, months, years because the imagined version is a collision, and collision feels like danger. So the truth stays unspoken, and the unspoken truth builds a wall between you and the other person, which is the real cost, paid daily in silence. Courage in conversation is not aggression, it is clarity spoken kindly. The fear sentence, if I say this, I am afraid it will damage the relationship. The real risk test, an honest sentence might cause brief discomfort. It rarely ends a real relationship, and if it ends a fragile one, that fragility was already there. What are you imagining? That the person recoils, that the bond breaks? What is real? That most relationships survive honesty, and the ones that do not survive dishonesty either. The conversation you avoid often protects a relationship that the avoidance is quietly harming. The one-step venture, say the sentence, small, true, timed well, not the whole speech, one honest line. I've been uncomfortable about this, can we talk? That is a step, not a confrontation, and a step is survivable, which is the point. Expand. Each honest sentence spoken and survived teaches that the collision feared was a meeting, and meetings, even hard ones, are where relationships actually deepen. The wall of silence was fear's construction. The sentence is yours, and the sentence rebuilds the bridge. Notice the inversion. The conversation avoided to protect the relationship often damages it more than the conversation would have. Courage here is not recklessness with words. It is the willingness to be briefly uncomfortable so the bond can be real. Fear of the hard conversation loses its job when you learn through evidence that honesty is usually met with honesty, and that the relief of the spoken truth, even when it lands imperfectly, is deeper than the relief of the avoided one, because the avoided one returns, and the spoken one is finally over. Chapter 14. Courage at Work and in Career Decisions. Work is where fear quietly runs many lives. The application not sent, the raise not asked, the idea not pitched, the role not pursued because the title isn't me yet, a story fear tells to keep you small. Career decisions are delayed for years under the name of patience, while patience becomes avoidance, and avoidance becomes a life in a job that fits no one you became. The fear at work wears respectable clothes, diligence, loyalty, realism. But under them is often the same protector afraid of rejection, of looking foolish, of being wrong. The cost is specific. The career you might have built, the skill you might have shown, the move you might have made, all traded for a safety that was never the life you wanted. The cost of safety ledger at work is long, and most people never write it, because writing it would require the very courage the avoidance was protecting them from. The 24-hour move applies directly. When an opportunity appears, a posting, a project, a conversation with a mentor, take one step within a day. A draft, a message, a question. The step is refusal-proof and interrupts the story avoidance builds. The real risk test, if you apply and are passed over, what realistically happens? A no, a lesson, a free data point. What are you imagining? That the no confirms you are not career-worthy. The no confirms fit, not worth, and fit is information, not verdict. Venture one step. Send the application you have drafted twice and feared thrice. Expand. Each career step taken while afraid builds the evidence that you can move in the professional arena, and movement is what careers are made of, not the waiting. Fear of career risk loses its driver's seat when you learn that the safe job held too long costs more than the risky one attempted, because the attempted one, even if it fails, leaves skill, story, and direction, and the held one leaves only the years. The wheel at work is yours. Fear has been driving it long enough. Chapter 15. Courage with Money, Projects, and Personal Goals. Beyond work, fear governs the personal build the project never launched, the money conversation never had, the goal postponed because the first step feels exposing. A personal project, especially a creative or vulnerable one, triggers fear of exposure. What if it is not good? What if no one cares? What if I am revealed as someone who tried? So the project lives in a drawer, and the drawer is fear's safest room. Money fear is its own shape. The negotiation not attempted, the rate not set, the ask not made because requesting feels like inviting refusal or conflict. The cost of safety here is literal, money left on the table year after year, because the discomfort of the ask outweighed the value of the yes. Fear, again, sells short-term comfort as if it were wisdom, and the compound cost is real money, real options, a real life slightly smaller than it could be. The one-step venture: launch the small version, ship the draft, set the rate, make the ask, not the grand version, the smallest real action that moves the project from drawer to world. The fear sentence: if I put this out, I am afraid it will be ignored or judged. The real risk test: some it will be, most won't matter. The ignored draft is data, not doom. Expand. Each shipped thing, each made ask, teaches that the exposed personal build is survivable, and survivable builds become a body of work, and a body of work is a life, which is the whole point of the goals fear has been keeping in the drawer. Personal goals deferred are the quietest loss because no one sees them but you, and you can pretend they were never that important. But they were important, or you would not have feared them. Courage with personal goals is courage with your own wanting, and wanting is not weakness. Venture the step. Expand through repetition. The goals leave the drawer, enter the world, and whether they succeed or not, they are yours, built by your hand, with fear in the passenger seat where it belongs, not at the wheel where it has been. Chapter 16. Acting before you feel ready. This chapter is the hinge of the whole method, because everything fear decides for you is decided in the gap between feeling and acting, and fear fills that gap with reasons to wait. The cure is not to feel ready. It is to act in the not ready, deliberately, as a practice. The ready feeling is a luxury the important life rarely grants, and waiting for it is the most elegant cage fear builds. Acting before ready is not recklessness, it is timed courage. You assess the real risk, confirm it is discomfort, not danger, and then move while the fear is fully present, because present is the only state from which you can move, and waiting for its departure is waiting for a train that is not coming. The shake, the doubt, the tight chest, these are the accompaniment, not the stop sign. You move with them the way you walk in the rain, wet but going. The mechanism is evidence. Each action taken unready produces a receipt. It was uncomfortable and I did it and I am here. The receipt contradicts fear's core claim that you cannot. You can, and the proof is the action, not the feeling. Over weeks, the receipts accumulate into a self-concept fear cannot overwrite. Someone who moves despite the fear. That person is not braver in feeling. They are braver in behavior, and behavior is the only kind of brave that changes a life. Make it a rule for the small things first, because the small things are where the muscle is built for the large. Speak before ready. Send before ready. Try before ready. The large moment will come, the real risk, the true conversation, and the muscle built on the small will be there, because courage is not summoned at the cliff. It is trained in the ordinary. Fear decided your life in the ordinary moments. You take it back in the same moments, one unready step at a time, until the wheel is yours by habit, not by exception. Chapter 17. The Brave Method in Real Life. Here is the method gathered, the 5 moves you can hold like a phone number, retrievable exactly when fear reaches for the wheel. It is not a ritual. It is a sequence, repeatable, for the person who feels the fear fully and intends to keep their hand on the wheel anyway, because the wheel is the only thing that decides a life. B. Bring the fear into view. Name exactly what you are afraid of instead of reacting to a vague dread. The fear sentence. If I do this, I am afraid that. Naming drains the vagueness fear feeds on. A named fear is a specific thing you can assess, not a fog that decides for you. R. Read what it is protecting. Identify what the fear serves. Safety, reputation, belonging, certainty, money, identity, pride, control. Usually it protects a feeling, not a fact. Knowing the protection shows the cost. You are trading a life for a feeling, and the trade is rarely one you would make awake. Assess the real risk. Separate real consequences from imagined catastrophe. The real risk test. What could realistically happen? What am I imagining? What could I do if it occurred? If the realistic outcome is survivable discomfort, the decision returns to you. If it is real danger, you pause, because courage is not recklessness. V. Venture one step forward. Take one small concrete action while fear is present. The one-step venture. The step is refusal-proof, so the hand moves, and movement is the only thing fear cannot survive, because fear lives in stillness and dies in motion. E. Expand through repetition. Teach yourself by repeated evidence that discomfort is survivable and action can precede confidence. The courage receipt. Each survived step enlarges the space you occupy until fear is a passenger, present but not driving. A real application. The avoided application. Bring it, I'm afraid I'll be rejected. Read it, protecting pride and belonging. Assess, realistic, a no, survivable. Imagine, proof I'm not worthy, a story. Venture, send the draft today. Expand, the no if it comes is a receipt proving I survived, and the next application is easier. The postponed conversation. Bring, I'm afraid it damages the bond. Read, protecting the relationship by hiding in it. Assess, honest speech is survivable, silence harms more. Venture, one true sentence. Expand, the bond holds or reveals its fragility, both useful. The pattern is one act repeated. Fear reaches for the wheel, brave is you keeping it. Chapter 18. building evidence that you can handle discomfort. The deepest change this book offers is not a feeling. It is a file, the accumulating evidence that you can handle what you feared. Fear's power rests on a single claim. You cannot. Every avoided step lets the claim stand unchallenged. Every taken step, while afraid, contradicts it, and contradictions repeated become the new truth, because the truth of your capacity is built by your behavior, not declared by your fear. The courage receipt is the tool that builds the file. After each uncomfortable action, record what fear predicted and what happened. The gap between the two, the predicted catastrophe and the actual Tuesday, is the evidence. Over time, the receipts form a body of proof that discomfort is survivable, that the feared moment was uncomfortable but not dangerous, that you moved and remained. Fear cannot argue with a file you built yourself, because the file is your life lived. This is why repetition matters more than intensity. One heroic act proves little and is hard to repeat. 100 small acts, each taken while afraid, build a self-concept fear cannot overwrite, because the self-concept is now evidence-based. You are not telling yourself you are brave. You are showing yourself, via receipts, that you act despite fear, and shown truth beats told truth every time. The file is the foundation the new life stands on, laid one refused proof step at a time. The practice, then, is to collect receipts on purpose. Seek the small discomfort. Take the step. Write the line. The file grows, and with it the quiet certainty that you are the kind of person who moves, which fears you cannot survive against. Building evidence is not a metaphor. It is the literal construction of a capable self, brick by brick, receipt by receipt, until fear, still present, sits where it belongs beside you, with no say in the direction, because the direction is written by the hand that kept the wheel. The body that sounds the alarm. Before going deeper, name where fear lives in the body, because the body is often the first to know and the last to be asked. The chest tightens. The breath shortens. The stomach knots. The hands cool. These are not metaphors. They are the ancient alarm system firing, and the firing is real even when the threat is not. The body cannot tell a predator from a performance review, and it reacts to both with the same chemistry, which is why a harmless conversation can feel like a threat. This is useful, not a problem. The body is an early warning you can use. When the chest tightens before a decision, that is the cue to ask what the mind is avoiding, because the mind will often dress the avoidance as sense, while the body simply reports alarm. My body is braced. What is the fear protecting? The physical signal becomes a second observer, one the storytelling mind cannot easily fool because the body does not argue, it only reports. Meeting the body is also part of the reset. You cannot think your way out of a braced body, but you can signal it. A slow exhale, the shoulders dropped, the feet felt on the floor. These are not magic. They are a message to the oldest part of you that says, in the only language it reads, that you are not in immediate danger right now. Lowering the body's alarm lowers fear's fuel, and a calmer body is one you can think and act from, instead of one the alarm is driving. None of this is medical advice. If the alarm is constant, crushing, or comes with hopelessness or panic that restricts your life, that is exactly what professional care is for, and seeking it is not a failure of courage. It is the correct response to a system overwhelmed, which is a kind of real risk this book always says to take seriously. The point here is modest. Fear lives in the body too, and the body can be both an early warning and a small, legitimate way back to the present, where the decision actually belongs to you. The protector that overprotects. Fear is not an enemy. It is a protector that, like any protector given too much authority, began making decisions it was never equipped to make. Imagine a guard hired to watch the gate who, over time, started deciding who you may speak to, where you may go, what you may attempt. The guard means well. The guard is also ruining your life because the guard's only tool is stopping, and a life is built by moving. Reading What Fear Protects, the R in Brave, is how you see the guard's motive and then limit its authority. The fear of the application protects pride. The fear of the conversation protects the relationship by hiding in it. The fear of the start protects identity. None of these protections are evil, they are just over-applied, because the guard stops every approach, not only the dangerous ones. The stop that saves you from a cliff also stops you from a conversation, and the guard cannot tell them apart. The shift is to thank the guard and demote it. I see you protecting my pride. Noted, I'm applying anyway. The fear is acknowledged, not obeyed, and acknowledgement is the difference between a protector you live with and a driver you serve. You are not erasing the guard. You are returning it to the gate where it belongs, watching for real danger and out of the rooms where your life is decided. The guard, correctly placed, is a help. Incorrectly given the wheel, it is the author of a small life, and the small life is the quiet cost of a protector allowed to overprotect. Real moments, real fears. A set of original scenes, drawn from the ordinary texture of a feared life, not from any one person. The application never sent. Someone sees a role they want and is qualified for. They draft the application, delete it, draft again. Fear of rejection runs the loop. They will see I'm not enough. The application sits in a folder for months. The role is filled by someone braver. The avoided rejection cost them the only thing they wanted, the chance. The fear sentence, had they written it, would name the protection, pride. The real risk test would show a no is survivable. The one-step venture, send the draft, would have moved them from park to in the game. Fear made the decision. They called it realism. The conversation of 6 months. A person has been uncomfortable with a pattern in a close relationship for half a year. Each time they consider speaking, fear of damage stops them. The unspoken truth builds a wall. When they finally say one honest sentence, the other person nods they had felt it too. The collision feared was a meeting. 6 months of avoidance protected nothing and cost intimacy. The 24-hour move, had they used it at month 1, would have spared the silence. Courage in conversation is not confrontation. It is the spoken truth that lets the bond be real. The project in the drawer. Someone wrote a personal project, a manuscript, a small business, a body of work, and never showed it. Fear of exposure. What if it is ignored? What if it is not good? The drawer is fear's safest room. Years pass. The project unseen cannot fail and cannot live. The cost of safety, a life slightly smaller than it could be, traded for the comfort of the unjudged. The one-step venture, shipped the small version, would have moved it to the world, where ignored drafts are data and shipped drafts are a life. Fear kept it in the drawer. The person kept it from the world. The trip not taken. Someone wants to travel alone, and fear of the unknown, of looking alone, of something going wrong, talks them out of it year after year. The trip is not dangerous. It is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar sounds the alarm. They go nowhere, and the going nowhere is a slow erosion of the self that wanted motion. The real risk test. Realistic outcomes are minor and manageable. Imagined ones are catastrophe. The venture. Book the smallest trip. Expand. Each trip taken alone proves the unknown is survivable, and survivable unknowns become a life of movement, which is the one the fear has been quietly canceling. The speech that wasn't. Someone is asked to speak, declines, citing a schedule that does not exist because the thought of standing exposed freezes them. The decline protects them from the moment, and the moment, had they stood in it, would have passed as moments do. The avoided speech costs a small growth, repeated, becomes a pattern of declining, and the pattern becomes a person known as someone who does not speak. The 24-hour move, accept, then prepare, would have interrupted the story. Courage at the podium is not fearlessness. It is a person who said yes while afraid, and the yes is the only thing that builds the speaker they wanted to be. The stories about other people's eyes. A particular fear deserves its own room, the belief that others are watching closely and judging. This story powers more avoidance than almost any other because it turns every visible action into a potential verdict. But the story is largely untrue. The spotlight you feel is yours. Others are in their own spotlights, preoccupied with their own perceived flaws, and your moment is a cameo in their movie, not the feature. Fear tells you the room is a jury. The room is mostly a queue of people waiting for their own turn to be assessed. Knowing this does not remove the feeling, but it corrects the story, and the corrected story returns the decision to you. You are not performing for a jury. You are living among people as busy and uncertain as you. The fear sentence. If I do this, I'm afraid they'll think less of me. The real risk test. Some might briefly, and their thought is not a fact and not permanent. The venture. Be seen in small, survivable ways, until the gaze loses its power. The freedom here is quiet but large. Other people's thoughts were never yours to control, so handing the wheel to them was a gift you did not need to make. Release it. Act as the person you are, not as the person fear says others require. Expand through repetition. Each time you are seen and the catastrophe does not arrive, you collect proof that the jury was a story, and the story, drained of evidence, loses its grip. Fear of the gaze is fear of a fiction about other minds, and other minds are the one thing you were never driving, so stop letting their imagined verdict drive you. The quiet cost of the safe choice. The safe choice feels free in the moment and expensive over time. Fear sells it as wisdom, better safe, and hides the ledger. But every safe choice that was not the life you wanted is a withdrawal from the account of your years, and the withdrawals unseen add up to a life smaller than the one available. The cost of safety exercise is the ledger, and the ledger once written is hard to unsee. Write it honestly. What has avoiding the decision cost so far? The time already gone, the energy spent managing the avoidance, the opportunity that closed, the confidence eroded, the self-respect quietly spent. The list is longer than fear admits, because fear shows only the comfort and hides the cost. Seeing the full price returns the decision to you, because a padded cage chosen blindly is one thing. A padded cage chosen with eyes open is a life you are no longer willing to trade for a comfort that was never the point. The safe choice also compounds in identity. Each safe choice teaches you that you are someone who chooses safety, and the lesson, repeated, becomes a self-concept fear can use against you. Of course you won't apply, you're a safe person. Breaking the compound requires the opposite repetition, small brave choices that teach you are someone who moves. The ledger and the repetition together shift the identity, not by declaration but by evidence, because the self you live from is built by your behavior, and the behavior fear directed is one you are now reclaiming, receipt by receipt. When fear is right. To keep the distinction honest, a chapter on the times fear is correct, because a method that never admits error is not a method, it is a slogan. Real danger is real, and the brave person assesses it and stops. Physical threat, step back. Legal exposure, get counsel. Financial ruin, do not leap. Medical signal, see a clinician. Abuse, unsafe relationship, leave, seek help. These are not discomfort in costume. They are danger, and the correct response is not courage but distance, and distance is its own kind of wisdom. The error to avoid is treating every alarm as danger, but the equal error is treating every alarm as false. The assess step exists precisely so you can tell them apart, and telling them apart requires honesty, not bravado. A person who cannot admit real risk is not brave. They are reckless, and recklessness is fear's cousin. Both hand the wheel to a feeling, one to stop, one to charge. Courage holds the wheel and reads the road, and the road sometimes says stop, and stopping then is not fear winning. It is you driving well. So the method includes its own limit. Brave is for the ordinary fears that impersonate danger, the awkward, the uncertain, the exposed. It is explicitly not for the cliff. When the assess step returns real danger, the brave move is to pause, protect, and get help, and that pause is not a failure of the method. It is the method working, because the method was always about putting you at the wheel, and the wheel sometimes turns away from the drop. Courage is not ignoring real danger. It is refusing to let ordinary discomfort impersonate it, and the refusal requires knowing the difference, which is the whole of the skill. The fear sentence, deeper. The fear sentence, if I do this, I'm afraid that. is the simplest tool in the book and the most underused because completing it requires honesty fear works hard to avoid. Fear prefers vagueness. Vagueness is where it operates. A named fear is specific, and a specific fear can be assessed, while a vague dread just sits and decides. The sentence is the act of dragging the fear into the light, and light is what fear cannot survive in. Practice it before the next avoided thing. Complete it on paper, not in the head, because the head revises the fear to sound reasonable, and reasonable fear is the most dangerous kind. It disguises the avoidance as sense. On paper, if I send this, I'm afraid they'll think I'm not capable. There it is, named. Now read what it protects: pride, belonging. Now assess, is being thought not capable for a moment real danger? No. Is it survivable discomfort? Yes. The decision returns to you, because the sentence dissolved the vagueness fear needed. The sentence also reveals the protection clearly. Most fears, when written, protect a feeling, not a fact: pride, comfort, the image of competence. Seeing that the fear is defending a feeling, not your life, is the quiet blow that returns the wheel. You are about to trade a real opportunity for a feeling's safety, and the feeling, once named, is not worth the trade. The fear sentence is not therapy. It is accounting, and accounting is what a person who wants to drive their own life does before they let a feeling make the call. The real risk test, deeper. The real risk test has 3 parts, and the third is the one fear hates most. What could I do if the feared outcome occurred? Fear wants you stuck at the catastrophe, the no, the flop, the embarrassment. The third question moves you past it, because almost always the answer is adjust, recover, try differently. The outcome is survivable and manageable, which means it is not a reason to hand the wheel to fear, and fear knows this. So it skips the third question and leaves you at the catastrophe, where stillness feels safe. Drill the 3 parts until they are reflex. Realistic outcome: discomfort, a no, a setback, an adjustment. Imagined: ruin, permanent exclusion, proof of worthlessness. Action if it occurs: a conversation, a revision, a recovery, a next attempt. The realistic plus the action equals a survivable event you can influence, which is the truth about almost every fear-driven decision. The imagined minus the action equals a story fear uses to keep you parked, and the story is not the future. A clean example: the feared launch fails. Realistic: a quiet launch, few eyes, a lesson in what does not land. Imagine: public failure, proof I should never have tried. Action if it occurs: review, adjust, relaunch smaller, or close it and use the skill elsewhere. The third answer, I can act, is what fear hides, because the moment you see you can act after the fall loses its power to stop you. The real risk test is not optimism. It is a plan for the worst realistic case, and a plan is exactly what returns the decision from fear to you, because a planned-for outcome is not a reason to avoid. It is a thing you can handle, and handled things are not fears. The one-step venture, deeper. The one-step venture is the engine of the whole method, because it is the only move fear cannot survive motion. Fear lives in the stillness before the act. The act itself, once started, is neutral, and the neutral act produces the receipt that contradicts fears you cannot. The art is to make the step refusal-proof, so small that obeying fears don't is harder than doing the step. Launch my career is refusable. Send one message to one contact is not. The grand step invites the terror that produces the freeze. The tiny step invites the hand. When the freeze comes, shrink the step until it is nearly impossible to refuse, then do that. The size is irrelevant. The motion is everything. A step laid is a life begun, regardless of scale, because motion is the substance and scale is decoration fear uses to intimidate you. The venture also bypasses the readiness requirement. You do not need to feel ready. You need to move, and moving while unready is the exact practice that builds the capacity fear said you lacked. Each venture taken unready is a receipt. I was afraid and I moved and I am here. The receipts accumulate into a self-concept, someone who moves despite fear, that fear cannot overwrite because it is built by your behavior, not by fear's claim. The one-step venture is not a small thing. It is the whole method in motion. one refusal-proof step at a time, and the steps laid become the life fear was keeping you from driving. The courage receipt deeper. The courage receipt, what fear predicted versus what happened, is the file-building tool, and the file is the deepest change this book offers. Fear's power rests on one unchallenged claim: you cannot. Every avoided step lets it stand. Every taken step while afraid contradicts it, and the contradiction, written down, becomes evidence no feeling can overwrite, because the evidence is your life lived. Make the receipt a habit, not a one-time exercise. Before an avoided action, write the prediction: they will reject me, I will crumble, it will confirm I'm not enough. After, write the result: a calm no, a survivable moment, a lesson. The gap between the two, the predicted catastrophe and the actual Tuesday, is the evidence, and the evidence, collected across a year, is a body of proof that discomfort is survivable and action precedes confidence. You are not telling yourself you are brave. You are showing yourself, via receipts, that you act despite fear. The receipt also corrects the memory. Fear rewrites the past. The moment you survived becomes, in memory, not that bad, so you forget it disproved the fear, and the fear's claim stands unchallenged next time. The written receipt stops the rewrite. You can return to it. Last time I was sure I'd crumble and I didn't. The file is the antidote to fear's editing, and the antidote, taken regularly, is what builds a capable self. Courage is not a feeling you wait for. It is a file you build, receipt by receipt, until the file is thicker than fear's story, and the thicker file is the truth that drives. The 24-hour move deeper. The 24-hour move, one concrete step within a day of a reasonable opportunity, is the anti-compounding rule, because avoidance compounds and the day window beats the compound. An opportunity unacted on becomes, by tomorrow, a story. Too late now, or I'll do it next week, which is the story avoidance builds to justify the pause. The day limit interrupts the story before it hardens, because a step taken today is a fact, and a fact fear cannot argue into a reason for stillness. The move must be concrete and small. Not think about it. That is avoidance wearing the clothes of action. A message drafted, a call made, a question asked. The step is refusal-proof and timed, which is the scale courage needs against a feeling that grows in delay. The window of a day is short enough to beat the story and long enough to act, which is exactly the interval that keeps the wheel in your hands instead of fears. Use it for the opportunities fear most likes to let pass: the posting, the invitation, the idea, the ask. Each, if left a day, becomes a maybe that becomes a never. Each, if stepped on within the day, becomes a fact that becomes a receipt. The 24-hour move is not urgency. It is the disciplined interruption of avoidance's compounding, and compounding is the quiet tax fear charges on every deferred yes. Pay the tax once, in a day, with a small step, and the opportunity stays yours. The receipt gets written, and the life fear was deferring becomes the life you actually build, one timely step at a time. More real moments, more fears. Further original scenes, because the method lives in specificity, and the specific is where recognition arrives. The raise not asked. Someone is underpaid and knows it and fears the ask will mark them as difficult or be refused. They do not ask for years, and the unasked raise compounds into tens of thousands traded for the comfort of not hearing a no. The cost of safety in literal money. The real risk test: a no is survivable, a yes changes the life. The 24-hour move, one message requesting a meeting. Fear made the decision, the ledger shows the price. The ask, once made, is a receipt that the no feared was survivable and the yes possible, and the possible yes was the only thing the avoidance was protecting them from. The boundary not set. A person agrees to things they do not want, from fear of seeming unkind, and the agreements accumulate into a life authored by others. The boundary not set protects belonging at the cost of self. The fear sentence: if I say no, I'm afraid they'll think badly of me. The venture, one small no kindly. Expand. Each no survived teaches that the relationship holds or reveals its fragility, both useful and the self, long submerged surfaces. Fear of the no keeps them small. The no dared is the size they were avoiding, and the size is livable. The help not requested. Someone struggles alone, fearing that asking for help reveals incompetence. The struggle persists unseen because the ask was feared more than the struggle. The fear sentence. If I ask, I'm afraid they'll see I can't cope. The real risk test. Most help is met with relief, not judgment. The imagined contempt is a story. The venture, one request. Expand. The help received disproves the story, and the next ask is easier because the receipt shows the feared contempt did not arrive. Fear of the ask keeps the struggle private. The ask dared is the relief that was always available and never requested. The travel solo at last. After years of the trip not taken, someone books the smallest version a night away alone. Fear of the unknown is present at the station. They go. The unknown survived is not the catastrophe feared. It is a normal experience with moments of unease and moments of freedom. The receipt. I was afraid and I went and I am here. Expand. The next trip is easier because the file shows the unknown is survivable, and survivable unknowns become a life of movement. Fear canceled the trips, the one taken, and the next become the life fear was keeping them from living, driven now by the person with fear along for the ride. The stage taken. The person who declined the speech years later says yes to a small one. The freeze arrives, they speak while it is there. The speech ends as speeches do. The catastrophe fear did not arrive, the relief did. The receipt. I was terrified and I spoke and I am here. Expand. The next yes is less frozen because the file shows the stage is survivable, and survivable stages become a voice the person wanted. Fear kept them from the podium. The yes dared is the speaker they were, always becoming, driven by the hand that kept the wheel. The long view of a brave life. If you could see the brave life a year on, you would notice what the daily view hides. The file is thick. The receipts accumulated, the applications sent, the conversations had, the steps taken while afraid, and the self-concept fear could not overwrite is now evidence-based. The feared moments still come, they always will. But the wheel is more often yours because the practice became a habit, and a habit is a life, not a decision. The year is made of small returns, not a single rise. The person who starts this work wanting fearless gets instead a life driven deliberately, with fear present but not steering. The comparison with others fades because your measure became internal, the step taken, the receipt written. An internal measure is the only kind that holds when the social gaze lies. The safe choices, once automatic, become choices you examine, and examining them returns the wheel, because a choice scene is a choice you can make, and a choice you make is a life you drive. Be in no hurry. Fear was installed over years and will not retire in a week. But every venture taken while afraid is a tiny demotion of the protector and a tiny promotion of you, and the promotions repeated become the default. You were never broken. You were driven by a guard who meant well and overreached, and the guard, correctly placed at the gate, is a help, not a ruler. The brave life is not a fearless one. It is a driven one, driven by you, with fear along for the ride, exactly where it belongs because the road is yours, and the wheel was always meant to be in your hands. A note on when to seek help. This audiobook is a practical companion for living more deliberately in the face of ordinary fear. It is not treatment for the heavier weather fear can bring, a constant alarm, panic that restricts life, anxiety that will not lift, or fear tied to real danger, trauma, or harm. Those deserve care from people trained to give it, and reaching for that care is not a failure of courage. It is the correct response to a burden too heavy to carry by a method alone, and the method says so plainly, because courage includes asking for help. A rough guide. If fear comes with panic, avoidance that isolates you, hopelessness, or thoughts of not continuing, please talk to a professional. Using brave to avoid that care is not brave. Using it alongside that care is. The method is a support, not a substitute, and knowing the difference is itself an act of assessment, the same assess step applied to the heaviest load. Is this real danger to my well-being? If yes, the brave move is to get help, not to white-knuckle a method past its use. Many capable people move through the heavier weather, and many find real relief with the right support. And reaching out is not the opposite of courage. Often it is the first real act of it. The brave method, WALKD through. A single life, walked through all 5 moves, to show the method as one continuous act rather than 5 separate ones. A person fears asking for a raise they are due. The fear has made this decision for years. Bring the fear sentence on paper. If I ask, I'm afraid they'll think I'm difficult and say no. Named. The vagueness fear needed is gone. The fear is now a specific thing, a predicted judgment, and a no. Read what it protects: pride, belonging, the image of being agreeable. A feeling, not a fact. The raise is real money, the protection is a comfort. The trade, real money for a feeling safety, is one the person would not make awake, and now they see it. Assess. Realistic. A no, a brief awkwardness, a data point on value. Imagined, proof I'm not worth employing, a permanent mark. Action if no, make the case with evidence or review options. The realistic outcome is survivable and manageable. The imagined is a story. The decision returns to the person because the no feared is survivable and the yes changes the life. Venture. The 24-hour move. One message requesting a meeting sent today. Refusal proof. The hand moves. Fear is present to protect the feeling, but the step is laid, and motion is the one thing fear cannot survive. Expand. The courage receipt. Predicted contempt. Actual calm discussion. The receipt joins the file. Next time the ask is easier because the file shows the contempt did not arrive and the no was survivable. The raise asked for becomes a receipt that the person drives this part of their life, and the driving repeated becomes the norm. The method is one act repeated. Bring, read, assess, venture, expand, not in sequence once but in circulation, because fear reaches for the wheel again and brave meets each reach. You do not master it and finish. You use it clumsily, and the clumsiness is still driving, which is the only thing that matters, because the life fear was steering is now, moment by moment, yours. What nobody tells you about courage. When the wheel is yours, people expect to feel fearless and are surprised to find they still feel afraid. The surprise is the trap. They think the method failed because the feeling remained, when the feeling remaining was never the goal. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of you at the wheel despite the fear, and the presence, not the absence, is the win. Also, the feared moments do not get easier in feeling so much as easier in handling. The first ask shakes, the 50th shakes less, not because the fear shrank but because the evidence grew, and evidence is what the hand grips when the shake comes. The file, not the feeling, is what changes, and the file is the quiet foundation of a brave life. Because a life built on evidence of your capacity does not need the feeling to be absent. It stands on the receipts, which are yours, written by your behavior, fear alongside, not driving. And the brave life may look ordinary from the outside. No fireworks, just a person who applies, who speaks, who starts, who says no, while afraid, and the afraid is normal and the action is the point. The ordinary brave life is not a headline. It is a Tuesday where the wheel was yours, and Tuesdays accumulated are a life. And a life driven is the only kind worth the fear that came with it, because the fear came anyway. And the only question was who held the wheel, and now you know the answer, more often than not, is you. The wheel was always yours. The deepest untruth fear sells is that the wheel was never yours, that the fear decides because the fear knows, and you, uncertain and shaking, are not fit to drive. But the wheel was always yours. The fear was a guard, hired by you, useful at the cliff, overreaching in the meeting, and the overreach was a habit, not a law. You can demote the guard. You always could. The book only named the demotion and gave it a method. Notice the relief in that. You were not powerless. You were habituated, and habit is the one thing a person can change, because habit is built by repetition and rebuilt by repetition. Every venture taken while afraid is a repetition of you driving. Every avoidance released is a repetition ended. The life fear directed was a habit of stillness. The life you drive is a habit of motion, and the habit, trained on small steps, becomes the default, because defaults are what the brain reaches for, and you are now training the right one. So the wheel was always yours and the guard was always yours to place. Place it at the gate, where real danger is its job, and out of the rooms where your life is decided. Let it sound the alarm, read the alarm, drive through the bells. The cliff, it stops you, the conversation, you go. The difference is not in the fear. It is in the hand on the wheel, and the hand, trained by evidence, is yours. And the life it drives is the one fear was keeping you from, not because fear won, but because you had not yet taken the wheel back, which you now have, one refusal-proof step at a time. The seat beside you. Return at the end to the image the book closes on. Fear can have a seat in the car. It does not get the steering wheel. The seat is real, fear is present, named, respected as a protector, heard without being obeyed. The wheel is yours. The decisions about your life are made by assessment and values, not by a feelings alarm. The two can ride together, and the ride is calmer for the clarity, because the passenger is known and the driver is you. You will offer the seat many times. Before the next ask, the next change, the next unknown, fear will climb in, and climbing in is fine. The practice is to keep it in the seat, acknowledged, not obeyed, while you drive. Some days you will forget and let it steer, and forgetting is not failure, only permanent forgetting is. You return, you name, you assess, you step. The receipts accumulate, the file thickens. And the car, more often than not, goes where you decide, with fear beside you, exactly where it belongs. The method in the end is not a transformation. It is a correction of who holds the wheel. You are always the driver. Fear was a guard who took the seat it was never given, and the taking was a habit, and habits end. The brave life is the life you drive, with fear along for the ride, and the ride, ordinary and real, is the one you wanted, not the small one fear was keeping you in. The seat is offered. The wheel is yours. Drive. A closing invitation. You began this audiobook with the decision fear made for you, the choice shaped by a feeling you did not examine, the life quietly directed from the passenger seat. You are still capable of that decision. The difference now is not that the fear is gone. It is that you know a method, and a method, used clumsily, still drives, while the unexamined feeling only steers, and steering by feeling was the whole of the small life. The brave method is offered free because it costs nothing but the small motion of using it. Bring the fear into view, read what it protects, assess the real risk. Venture one step forward, expand through repetition. 5 moves, repeatable, yours to use the next time fear reaches for the wheel, because it will reach, as protectors do, and reaching is not the problem, obeying is. You act with the fear present. That is what brave means here, and brave, practiced, becomes the default, because defaults are built by repetition, and you are now building the right one. Fear can have a seat in the car. It does not get the steering wheel. The cliff, it stops you, the conversation, the application, the start, the no, you go, while it watches. The difference was never in the feeling. It was in the hand on the wheel, and the hand, trained by evidence, is yours. The life fear was steering is now, moment by moment, driven by you, and a driven life, ordinary and real, is the one worth the fear that came with it. You were never broken. You were driven by a guard who overreached, and the guard, correctly placed, is a help, not a ruler. Take the wheel. Fear can come with you. It just cannot drive. Final chapter. Fear can come with you. It just cannot drive. We return to the opening, the decision fear made for you, the choice shaped by a feeling you did not examine, the life quietly directed from the passenger seat. If you have done the work of these chapters, that decision is not your only kind. You have, somewhere in the last pages, named a fear, read its protection, assessed its risk, ventured a step, and collected a receipt. The pattern is now yours, and a pattern, repeated, becomes a life you actually drive. You will not arrive at a fearless existence. That was the cartoon, and the cartoon is a trap. Fear will come with you before the next ask, the next change, the next unknown, because fear is a protector, and a protector does not retire when you get braver. It gets quieter, maybe, and less trusted with the wheel, but it stays, and staying is fine, because the goal was never to evict it. The goal was to stop letting it steer. So let fear have a seat. Let it name the cliff, because sometimes the cliff is real and the protector is right, and the right response to a real cliff is to stop, which is not cowardice, it is sense. But when the alarm is a bell, the awkward call, the rejected application, the uncertain start, fear can sit and watch while you drive. It does not get the wheel. The wheel is yours because the life is yours, and a life directed by a protector against every discomfort is a small life, and you are allowed a larger one. The practice does not end. Fear will reach for the wheel again because that is what protectors do, and you will sometimes let it, and letting it once is not failure, only permanent letting is. You return, you name, you assess, you step. The receipts accumulate, the file thickens, and one day the question is not, will I be afraid, but who is holding the wheel, and the answer, more often than not, is you. That is the whole of courage, and it was never the absence of fear. It was the presence of you, driving with fear along for the ride, exactly where it belongs.